the DOGE project ultimately is about dismantling the ability of the state to protect workers, consumers, and citizens from oligarchs like Elon Musk.
But I also don't want us to lose sight of what the federal government continues to do and has been doing since Inauguration Day back in January, and how much of a failure it is even from leaders within the DOGE project. And I'm going to be playing for you an interview that one of the senior DOGE people, a tech bro, a founder in Silicon Valley of some Gumroad, it's some company, I don't know even what they do, but supposedly it's a big deal. And he was one of the leaders of DOGE, and he has been unceremoniously fired recently. And he gave an interview to, it started when he gave an interview to somebody at Fast Company about it. And we talked about that. We covered that interview when it came out. We talked about how he said, that, the government was not nearly as inefficient as I thought it was. And apparently he was fired without warning and without any justification or cause following that interview being made public. And so NPR talked to him both about his findings at DOGE and about why he was fired. So I'm going to play a few portions of this interview, but I want to start with his reasoning for joining the DOGE project, because DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, like that idea that I want government to be more efficient is an idea that a lot of people have in good faith, and something that they actually would like to see progress on and that they would like to see executed. And it does seem to me like this fellow kind of was of that persuasion. He came into this project in good faith. He came into it not wanting to destroy the government, but wanting to make the government more efficient and more responsive to the needs of people. And that's not a bad thing. That's something that I would like to see as somebody who has been a federal employee for a long time. And so let's listen to this guy talk about why he joined DOGE.
I really believe that software can play a really important role in making being an American citizen like a better experience. People are frustrated with the tools and technology that they have to use when they interface with the U.S. federal government. And I've always been interested as a software engineer ever since I was like a sophomore in high school. It's hard for me to think of a better way to have a larger impact as someone who writes code every day and enjoys, designing and building products, web applications, iPhone applications than working for the U.S. federal government. And Bernie, Hillary, Obama, Trump, it doesn't really matter to me if the work is making it easier to pay taxes or, making it easier for veterans to collect benefits. I like when my software gets used by a lot of people and people send me nice emails. In this case, people weren't sending me the nicest emails, unfortunately, but they also didn't really know what I was doing. They saw DOGE, weren't a fan of certain things that they were associated with. But I think at the end of the day, like the role of the U.S. Digital Service is to improve the UX of being an American, which is pretty exciting. And anyone who lets me do that, I will try to work for, even if my friends and family aren't huge fans.
And so there you go. Look, that's somebody who is entering this in good faith and wants to make it easier to pay taxes. Well, one of the things that DOGE did immediately after they got into the IRS and the Treasury Department was they're trying to eliminate the IRS's direct file program, which would allow you to, for free, go around TurboTax and H&R Block and be able to forego paying some tax collection company hundreds of dollars a year to pay your taxes, because guess what, folks? The government knows how much money you owe it, and it can just tell you that, right? And so one of the things that the Biden administration was trying to do was just to allow the government to tell you how much money you owe it. And guess what? The DOGE people, they decided to try to kill that program. They decided to try to kill that program because guess what? TurboTax doesn't want this direct file program to be available to citizens for free. They want to make it more difficult for people to pay taxes. They want to make it, and they want to be able to be a middleman, right? They want to be able to collect a rent, to collect a fee on you paying your taxes. And the Trump administration was like, okay, well, we're fine with that. That's fine. We're fine with, I mean, you talk about waste and inefficiency, right? I mean, it's just totally ridiculous. And so, so he talks about, he talks some about like why he went into the DOGE project, why he wanted to be a part of this thing. And then, she asked him, well, what did you encounter while you were part of this project? Let's take a listen to this clip where he talks about his experience.
As you did more and more of this work in the time that you were involved with DOGE, did you find the federal bureaucracy to be rife with waste and fraud and abuse?
Frankly, no, I did not find the federal government to be rife with waste, fraud, and abuse. I was expecting some more easy wins. I was hoping for opportunity to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. And I do believe that there is a lot of waste. There's minimal amounts of fraud, and abuse to me feels relatively non-existent. And the reason is I think we have a bias as people coming from the tech industry where we worked at companies, such as Google, Facebook, these companies that have plenty of money, are funded by investors, and have lots of people kind of sitting around doing nothing. The government has been under sort of a magnifying glass for decades. And so I think generally, I personally was pretty surprised actually at how efficient the government was. This isn't to say that it can't be made more efficient. Elimination of paper, elimination of faxing, but these aren't necessarily fraud, waste, and abuse. These are just rooms to modernize and improve the U.S. federal government into the 21st century.
So listen to that. I want to just underscore why he came into this project with the idea that government was going to be incredibly inefficient. Did you catch that? He said, I thought the government would be so inefficient because I came from the private sector where we've got a bunch of people who are being paid a bunch of money to really, frankly, sit around and do nothing. That was his experience in the private sector, in the tech industry. That's supposed to be like the cutting edge of capitalism, right? That's what we're told. The tech industry, cutting edge of capitalism. This is one of the most productive sectors of the economy. And this guy came into the government expecting the government to be more like the private sector and to have so much waste and abuse like what he came from. And he went into the government and he was like, oh, that doesn't actually exist. There's not actually a bunch of people sitting around doing nothing, getting paid big dollars to sit around and do nothing. And he said, obviously, like in any industry, there is room to make things more efficient. But what is the thing that is going to actually make the government more efficient? It is not cutting jobs. It is not making it more difficult for you to pay your taxes. It is not cutting this program or that project. It is modernizing the government and making it easier for you to pay taxes, making your interactions with the government more seamless and more convenient, right? Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate. And so that's, but that was not actually what the DOGE project was about. The DOGE project ultimately is about dismantling the ability of the state to regulate companies like Elon Musk's Tesla and SpaceX and his Twitter company, right? They don't want the government to be able to protect workers and consumers and citizens from oligarchs like Elon Musk. And so, it was a big failure. The DOGE project has basically been a big failure on the thing that it is selling to people, right? It's a big success in what it's actually been about. It's been a big success in making it more difficult for the federal government to protect workers and consumers and community members. But it has been a huge failure in doing actually what they sold to people, which was making government more efficient. It has not done that. And so, the question then is why? Why has it failed? And he answered that question in this clip.
When you did identify inefficiencies at the VA, I wonder, did you often identify the public interest reasons for why things might have been the way that they were?
Definitely. The sort of first thing that comes up anytime you question, why does a veteran's disability claim take 133 days on average to process? The answer is not because people are just sitting around doing nothing all day long. It's because there are a lot of rules and regulations that Congress has put in place over decades that just make it very, very complicated.
So there you go. Like, these things are complicated. It's difficult work, and it's made complicated because of the restrictions that Congress has placed on these government agencies. It is not just that federal government bureaucrats have gone around creating these rules and regulations to make their jobs more difficult for no reason, because they love wasting people's time and wasting people's money. That's not actually why, to the extent that it is, the government is inefficient. It's inefficient because of Congress and things that Congress has done. And so, so he was talking about that, and then she asked, well, why were you fired then, right? I mean, you're talking about this. DOGE is supposed to be one of the most, Elon Musk says, maximally transparent. And yet this guy who was being transparent about his experience, he seemed to have a different view than Elon Musk, but he was being transparent. And so, why can't people with different views express what their experience has been? Well, let's listen to why he to what happened when he was fired.
Can you walk us through what happened before you were let go?
Yes. So I probably stupidly was asked by not even a journalist, but a writer who just has a blog about my business going open source. And I spoke to him. He had a bunch of questions about me working for DOGE. And I felt that Elon was pretty clear about how he wanted DOGE to be maximally transparent. That's something he said a lot in private and publicly. And so I felt, okay, cool. I'll take him at his word. I will be transparent and, sort of an ask forgiveness, not permission sort of thing. I said mostly that the government was not as inefficient as I was expecting. And then my access got revoked pretty shortly after. I didn't get notified. I was basically ghosted. And I just got an email notification that my access was no longer valid.
So there you go. I mean, that's pretty wild. Just the kind of brazenness of this sort of thing. And IRS employees are now talking about how these job cuts are going to make it more difficult to modernize the IRS. In the Government Executive, it's like a trade journal about federal agencies. They report that the IRS budget lists a nearly 60% reduction to IT and support staff in the coming fiscal year, from 10,300 people in 2025 to 4,250 employees. That means that the loss of 2,000 tech employees is only about half of what's to come. If all of those who signed up for the administration's delayed resignation offer are approved to leave and layoffs resume as anticipated, the overall IRS workforce reductions could bring the agency below 60,000 employees. That would mark a reduction of more than 40% since Trump took office. What is that going to do? It is going to make it more difficult for the IRS to modernize its technologies. It is going to, eliminate the direct file program. You are going to be forced to continue to pay hundreds of dollars to middlemen like TurboTax and things like this. And it is going to make it more easy for billionaires like Elon Musk to cheat on their taxes. When the IRA was passed with money to increase hiring at the IRS, there was a lot of fear mongering about, this is going to increase audits on normal working people. Well, the IRA has been law for a while now. The IRS did staff up for some amount of time before Trump came into office, and we have the data, and we can see that audits on working people, on people who make under like $500,000, did not go up even a fraction of a percent. You were no more likely to have been audited by the IRS if you are a normal person during the Biden administration than you were before. But guess what happened under the Biden administration? Audits for the top 1% increased significantly. And cutting the staff is going to make it more difficult for the IRS to do audits on people like Elon Musk. And so those audits are going to go down. We are going to lose significant revenue because people are going to cheat on their taxes. And that is ultimately, again, that's what the DOGE project was about. It was not about making the government better for you and for me. It was about making the government more subservient to oligarchs and kings. So there you go.
Yeah, and a couple things I wanted to mention before we wrap this segment up. You talked about those rules and regulations that complicate the work, that slows down the work. And I think it's worth pointing out that most of the time, those rules and regulations are designed to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse, right? The very thing that they're so obsessed with. And the other thing is that to the extent that there are opportunities to modernize, to make things more efficient, who knows better how to do that than the workers, right? The people who are actually in these jobs, the people who do the work every day. This is what they spend 40 hours or more a week doing. And so they can tell you which programs need to be updated. They can tell you which, technologies they're using are behind the times. They can do all of that. And rather than have constructive dialogue with the workers, they've declared war on their unions. And so there again, it's not about government efficiency, right? Because you can talk to, it doesn't matter what industry you're talking about, whether it's public sector, private sector. If you talk to rank and file workers, they can always identify areas of improvement. And that's something that always, irritates me about these fiercely anti-union employers. What they don't appreciate is if they actually sit down and talk with the workers and the union, they can often find ways to save money. They can often find ways to make more money, right? They can find ways to make operations better. But, again, their anti-union bigotry and hostility trumps all logic and facts.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project. And you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.